I've ridden with all the most popular EUC pads over the years, but only one of them rises to the top. I've tried the Nylonove V1 and V2 pads. I've tried Grizzla pads. I've had the knockoff ones. I've had BBQ Prints Pads. I have tried them all. And there's only one of them, in my opinion, that is the best of the best. Let's talk about it. This is Wheel Good Time. So I've tried all the most popular pads out there, and let's just discuss first the ones that didn't quite make it into the winner's circle. But before you do, let me get my smart guy jacket on. Fashion over function, am I right? It's a little cold out here. All right, so the first one that didn't quite make it into the winner's circle is BBQ Prints Pads. These are not bad by any means. After all, these are pretty good. The only issue that I've found with this is that they are a bit on the small side, especially for a Begode Extreme. Because these are fairly stiff, that means that they are printed with a little bit higher infill for 3D printing. So these are gonna be a little bit more on the sturdy side, but I just found that they just weren't super duper comfortable. So these are not gonna be in the winner's circle here. Then I tried the Nylonove Kinetic Pads, and as you can see, we don't even have a full set here. This is the version 1, and they don't make these anymore. They've recently upgraded to the version 2, which is a lot better. Now, the version 1s here are actually pretty good, despite the fact that part of it has fallen off. That was a big flaw with this. Now, with the version 1 Nylonove Kinetic Pads, they were very easy to separate, and then parts would just fall off. Now, it was pretty awesome with the Kinetic Pads that they have this nice hinge here, so you can adjust it to whatever your personal preferred angle is. And that was really nice. There's actually a bit that goes on the bottom here, but unfortunately, while I was doing some trail riding, the bottom part fell off. And on this, the rear part fell off. They just fall apart super duper easily, but they have corrected it in the version 2, and I have tried that. It's very nice. One really nice thing about Kinetic Pads is that it's flared out just a little bit at the top, so you can get your shin pressing on there really nicely. Another awesome thing about Kinetic Pads is the fact that the print layers are so thin that it just has this incredibly smooth appearance. It's really, really nice. Now with Kinetic Pads, the price is going to be a little bit higher, and the reason for that is the fact that these print layers are so thin, it takes longer to print, and they just come out so professionally. They come out perfect. So this is a really nice pad, and I really do like it. And the version 2s are so much better. Unfortunately, parts of this just got lost with the version 1. So I wasn't a huge fan of that, and it just became cost prohibitive to keep replacing the parts over and over. Ultimately, I have to give a big thumbs up to Nylonove for their Kinetic Pads, but their version 2s really fixed the issue where parts just fall off. And now we have the rip-off version of the Kinetic Pads, and you can actually print these out yourself for a pretty decent price, and you can just get them on Thingiverse. These pads are really not bad, and they also flare out a bit at the top, so you can really crank down on the very top here. One issue that I found with this and the original Nylonove Kinetic Pads is that because there's so many different segments, it's really tough to get that perfect angle, and you have to really finagle it and adjust it over and over to really get that perfect angle. And then once you do that, you have to do it on the other side. So that's not really awesome, but it's something that you just have to deal with. Now you might notice that there is one set of pads that is conspicuously missing from this table, and that's Clark Pads. I ordered a set of Clark Pads to replace my Nylonove Kinetic Pads, the V1s, but unfortunately they landed in the trash, and I'll tell you why. I ordered them online from clarkpads.com, and they shipped them really quick, and I was really impressed with the customer service. Unfortunately, when I received the C3 Biopads, they just really were not very comfortable. They were extremely tight, and they're a super innovative design, and I think that type of pad is ideal for racers because it really, really locks in your foot. Unfortunately, they weren't particularly ergonomic, and I wasn't able to sit down very comfortably on my EUC with these pads. They come kind of to a point at the edges, and so it just kind of digs into your leg when your leg exits the pads, and so that wasn't really my favorite thing about these pads. Also, and I didn't realize this until after I received these pads, but you're not supposed to lay your EUC on its side with the Biopads on. The reason for that is because the weight of the wheel tends to just push against it. Unfortunately, laying my EUC on its side while transporting my Master Pro in the car landed my Clark pads in the trash. When I laid it down, it deformed the TPU and it ended up just permanently deforming my pads. So that was a big disappointment, and that's a bit on me because you're not supposed to do that. But I can't transport my Master Pro vertically in the car. So what can you do? And now for the grand championship of the world, the best pads that have ever been made for EUCs are Grizzla Flow Pads. Now for my full and honest disclosure, these pads were given to me by Grizzla in exchange for my honest thoughts about it. But I will be giving my honest thoughts and I will not be pulling any punches. Fortunately, there's really not a whole lot of complaints about these. I thought that the rounded profile of the Grizzla pads really was not very ergonomic at first, and I was wrong. I actually really like it. Now with kinetic pads, you have 3 different segments. We don't have the bottom part here because, as we said before, that went missing, but you are able to infinitely adjust the angle to whatever you want. Whereas with the Grizzlas, it is rounded and you don't have that kind of option. So I was very hesitant to be all about it. I thought that the Grizzlas were going to be taking second place to the kinetic pads, but as it turns out, because this is really soft, when you press against it, it just seems like it increases the contact patch with your shin to the pads, and almost every position that I put this in is just comfortable. With the kinetic pads and the clone kinetic pads, I was finding myself just constantly trying to find that perfect angle, something that I had to finagle it and finesse it until finally I just found what I needed. Now with this, it just seemed like everything just worked. Almost everything worked out just perfectly for it, and I was really surprised about it. I also found the print quality for the Grizzla pads to be on par with the kinetic pads. You can really see how thin the print layers are on this, and so it has a really smooth feeling against your leg. Another outstanding thing about Grizzla pads is that the top portion is also flared out, and so you're able to really torque down on the top part of your shin if necessary, which is really nice. Another nice thing about Grizzlas is that it's flat on the sides, and therefore it's not going to permanently deform when you lay your EUC on its side, say if you're transporting it in the car. Something unique about Grizzla pads is this locking mechanism. You don't get that with any other brand. So what you do is that once you have the perfect mount on one side, you have it just the angle that you want. You just have to loosen up this little screw here with your thumbs, find that perfect angle that you like, make sure it's perfectly symmetrical, and then tighten it down. Then it's really easy to just come around to the other side, and once you have that angle just the way you want, now it's easy, super easy to have it perfectly symmetrical. So that's something unique to Grizzlas, and I really like it. One common complaint about both Grizzla pads and Nylonove pads is that they are a bit on the expensive side. And I hear you, I totally understand. I mean, these big pads, I think they cost roughly $200 US, give or take, and they can take a little bit longer to ship to you because they are custom made. They're whatever you custom order in whatever colors, they make it to order. And being that the print layers are so thin, it does take a little bit longer to print. So it does take some time to create these from scratch. Ultimately, you're paying for the absolute highest quality EUC pads out there. And I know that there are a lot of people that think, well, the Kinetic Pads V2 are superior to Grizzlas, and that's fine. And I totally understand where you're coming from. The way I see it, Grizzlas are like the high-end iPhone of pads, and the Kinetic Pads are like the high-end Android of pads. Kinetic pads are really good, and you may have to finagle them and finesse them just to get just the right fit to make it just right for you. But once you find that perfect fit, customers are really happy. With Grizzlas, it just works. I can't explain it. I thought that because my shin is flat, that somehow this curved bit here is gonna be uncomfortable, or that it's somehow not gonna work. But somehow, magically, those people in Poland have just sorcery powers. This is magical, and I really like it. So which pad type to you is the absolute best? Personally, I give the gold medal to Grizzlas, and a very close second place silver medal goes to the Nylonove Kinetic V2 pads. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel because it brings me joy, and it is the season of joy to the world. So Thank you for joining me. That's all for today, and I'll see you next time.